In this video I'm going to show you how to edit the text and images of different artboards all at once. This will be a great help if you want to design multiple sized artboards that contain the same data. The great thing is that you can edit it manually in Photoshop or import it from a spreadsheet. Now let's get started. You can set up the document any way you want. The important thing is that the artboard option is selected. You can find the artboard option over here next to orientation. All that's left now is click create and the document will be created. So over here we have our first artboard. To duplicate the artboard, we're going to select the move tool from the tools panel first. Then you can click on the artboard to select it. Head back over to the move tool and click on it with your right mouse key. Over here you can select the artboard tool. Now as you can see, these plus icons will appear next to your artboard. When you click on one of the plus icons, the artboard will be duplicated. You will also see the artboards being generated in the layers panel at the bottom right of the screen. For this tutorial I'm going to use different sized artboards to show you how to edit all the artboards at once, even though there's a difference in between the artboard sizes, font sizes or image sizes. To adjust the size of the artboard, you can use these handles on the side with the move or artboard tool selected. Okay, so these will be the artboards that will contain the data that we can later edit all at once. So let's get started with giving our artboards some data. We start off with a little background just to show you how to copy layers into the different artboards. To copy a layer into a different artboard, we are moving over to the layers panel over here. Click on the layer you want to copy, drag it while holding down Alt, and you will see that the layer is being copied into the different artboards. Now we're going to move back to artboard 1 and create a new pixel layer. In this layer we will create a placeholder for the image. This must be a layer that already has pixels. To do this, we're going to use the selection tool and drag in a rectangle. The selection you make now can be seen as the box where the image will be placed in later. The layer must contain pixels. To do so, you can select right click, choose a fill. I'm going for 50% gray. The type of fill you choose doesn't matter as long as the layer contains pixels, because the technique we're using later is called the pixel replacement technique. Okay, so now let's copy this layer to the different artboards again. All these placeholders can be set to a different size on each artboard. When importing the picture later on in this video, you will see that the sizes of the placeholders will be applied. Now we just repeat the step for artboard 3 and 4. If you want to give an opacity or a blend mode in advance, you can set it now. I set the opacity of the image that completely fill the artboards to 50% so that the background is slightly visible. So when we're going to import the image later on, the opacity that we set now will be applied. Okay, now that we have our artboards filled with the placeholder for the images, we're also going to add some text layers. For this tutorial I'm creating an example that has a title and a description. I'm also going to create some variants to the title, because some titles will be longer than the other. So this will be the title with the bigger font, and now we're going to duplicate this layer and set the font size to a smaller size for the longer titles. Now we're going to name the layers. It's highly recommended to name the layers, because later on in this video you will have to choose what layers must be linked. So you can make it yourself more easy when you're naming the layers before you duplicate them to the next artboard. Select both layers holding down Shift, and then we drag them holding down Alt to a new artboard, and over here you can resize the text so it will fit on a new artboard. It doesn't matter if you choose another alignment, font or text color. As long as we link the layers together, which we will do later on in this video, you can give it any size, color or alignment you want. Okay, now we're going to repeat this step for all the artboards. So remember to select both layers, hold down Shift and click them, and to copy the layers you can drag down while holding down Alt. Okay, so let's finish this up. And now we have our the artboards with the titles in it, the long title and the short title. Now we're going to place a new text layer and we're going to create a text box. To create a text box, select the text tool and drag down a box. Later on in this video we will also link these text boxes together, so all the text box will contain the same data as we import. I already prepared some data to fill in, so let's copy and paste one example to set the size for the text. And also remember to give your layer a name so you can link them together later more easily. Okay, now we're going to repeat this process for all the other artboards. Remember to hold down Alt while you drag it to copy the layer. And for these text box goes the same as for the titles. You can change the font size, the alignment, you can change anything you want. It won't be affected when we link the layers together. So just as an example, I will change this font and also the color of it. And now let's fill the final two artboards with these text boxes so we can finally start with the more exciting part of this tutorial, which is linking the layers together. Okay, so let's get started with linking the text and image layers together so the imported data will be applied to all the artboards. Head over to Image, Variables and select Define. In the Define menu we are going to tell Photoshop which layers are linked together and must show the important data. Click on the little arrow next to Layer to see all the layers. Here you see the name of the artboards. These names correspond with the names in the layer panel. So all these names in the layer panel can be found in the Define menu in the same order. So let's make a start with linking these layers together. We're going to start with linking the description layer. Make sure the layer is selected and then click on Text Replacement. You will see that the name is text variable 1. Notice that when it is linked, you will see this little star symbol next to the layer name. Now let's select the description layer of artboard number 3. And select the text replacement function again. The default now is that it will start to count, but we want it to be linked to that same text variable 1, the same variable as the previous description layer. Now both layers are linked to that variable, so we're going to repeat the step for the description layer of artboard 3 and 4. So the step is to select the layer from the list, click on text replacement and fill in text variable number 1. The link symbol will now tell you that this and 3 other layers are linked together. Now let's link all of the title small layers together. The process is the same, but this will actually be text variable 2, meaning that all the data we are going to fill in text variable 2 will show up to all the linked layers. So the process is the same. Select the title small layer, then select text replacement and then select text variable number 2. And when we're done with the title small, we're going to move over to title big. And this will be the text variable number 3. So again, select the layer, select text replacement and then choose for text variable number 3. So when you're done, all the layers you want to have linked together should have the same text variable. Now let's have a look on how to link the images together. So we're going to click on the placeholder image layer. Then we're going to select pixel replacement. And as you will see, this will also create a pixel variable. So instead of a text variable, we now have a pixel variable. Over here, you can set the alignment for the image. You can also select the method of fill for the placeholder image. When you hover over the different techniques, you will see an explanation at the bottom. A beautiful thing about the pixel variable technique is that these settings will only apply to the selected layer. So let's say you have one artboard where the image must be aligned to the left of the placement holder and one artboard where it must align to the right side of the holder, then you can set these settings like we do now for all the different layers. Okay, so now we click on the next placement holder image layer. And over here we're going to select the same pixel variable, so it will be linked together. So like I said, this layer can have its own method of fill and its own alignment. So let's finish up these last two placement holder image layers. After the last layer is linked to its variable, we're going to fill in the data at a different menu which can be found over here, the dataset menu. In this menu, we're going to fill in the data for our different variants to these artboards. To create a new variant or a new dataset, we're going to click on this icon. This will create your first dataset. Over here, you can find all the variables we've linked to the layers in the previous part of this tutorial. The pixel variable layer is selected. So over here at select file, we're going to load in one of the example photos and see how it will be applied to all the different artboards. So here you go, the image we just chose is now being applied to all the different artboards. Make sure that preview is selected. Now let's move on to text variable number 1, which we have linked to all the description layers. So let's copy and paste in some data I already prepared. Now this text will be applied to all the description layers. Now all that's left is fill in the title layer. For Dubai, we can go for a bigger title. So the smaller title, we're going to give just a spacebar, a blank. You can't leave it empty, so that's why we're using the spacebar. Now over at the bigger title, we're going to fill in Dubai. Photoshop can take a little while for your preview to load. So just let it render a bit and your preview will appear eventually. So there you go. This is the first dataset, which contains now the data we've imported from the example sheet. You can also notice that it will only take the text we imported. The font settings and the alignments we set earlier on in this video are applied. Now we can click on this icon to create a new dataset. The Dubai dataset is now stored as dataset number 1. Now let's repeat the steps we did in the first dataset, the pictures and text for dataset number 2. You can see that the image is not filling the placeholder in the right way. So we're doing a little troubleshooting after we've imported the text. For Barcelona, we need the longer title. So replace the spacebar for Barcelona and fill in a space at the shorter title variable. So now let's have a look and do some troubleshooting for the image. As you can see in my artboard, the image is not imported in the way that I want. So let's move back again to the define menu and make some changes. Let's try another way to fill the placeholders. So we're selecting fill instead of fit. Now repeat that step for all the layers. And then you can move back to the dataset menu to see if it worked. So now that the final layer is done, we're going to move back to datasets. So there you go, now the image is placed perfectly in the holder. So remember, you can always just move back to the settings at the define menu to make changes. Okay, so let's import another dataset to walk through the steps one more time. To open up a new dataset, we're going to click on this little icon. Now we're going to import this pixel variable by selecting select file. Over here we have all our editable variables we can choose from. So over here you can import the title and the description. And remember, for a variable to be blank, you must use the spacebar. Okay, so that is how you import the datasets manually. When you're done with setting up the datasets, you can click on OK in the menu. Now let's move on to the next chapter, which is saving the datasets as files. To save the datasets as files, we're heading over to File, Export and select Datasets as Files. This menu is used to save the different datasets as PSD files. Over here you can choose how the file name must be structured when exporting. So for example, if you want your file name to be structured with the document name first, then followed by an underscore, and then followed by the dataset name. Also make sure to select the folder where you can export to and click on OK. This will start the exporting process, and when it's done you can find your files in the chosen export folder. So here we have our exported datasets. If you want your dataset to be saved as a different type than a PSD, then you can go to Export and select Artboards to Files. Over here, you can choose the extension to which your artboards will be saved to. To set the quality of the JPEG, you can click on Export Options. When you have selected the export folder, you can click on OK. And when this process is done and we move over to the selected folder, you can see the exported files. For the final and more advanced part of this tutorial, we're going to import the datasets from a spreadsheet like Excel instead of doing it manually. First thing we need to get started is the exact name of the variable. So in this example, the description layer is linked to text variable 1. These exact names of the variables will be the header for our spreadsheet. I'm using Google Spreadsheet myself because it's available for everyone, and I've noticed that older versions of Photoshop tend to give an error when using Excel. You can just simply go to spreadsheet.google.com and get started right away. Okay, so let's get started by filling in these header names. So the header names must exactly match the variable names in the Photoshop file. The best way is to copy and paste them so you can't make any mistakes. All the variable names you gave to your file must be in the spreadsheet, because else you would not be able to import it. Same goes for the pixel variable files. Now the header names are complete, we can fill in the data. It might be easy to set what layer the variable is referring to so you don't get it mixed up. For the text variables, you can just simply copy and paste the text in the spreadsheet. Okay, so let's speed up the process so we can move further to importing the path names for the image files. After that, we're going to apply a little trick to the blank cells, because when we leave them blank, you are not able to import the file. So we must trick Photoshop a little bit by using a special character. So the dataset at the pixel variable column must refer to the path image. In Windows, you can easily copy the path name by holding down Shift and right click on the files and select Copy as Path. So hold down Shift when you use the right click. And when the location to the files is copied, you can paste it in the spreadsheet like this. Sometimes there are characters in front or at the end of the path. Make sure to delete those. And also make sure to set them in the right order. Okay, when all the data is filled in the spreadsheet, we're going to have a look on the blank cells in the file. You can skip this part if you have any blanks in the file, because you will not be able to import it. Okay, so for the blanks, you want to fill in a non-breaking space. I will set the character for the non-breaking space in the description down below, but you can also use Google or Wikipedia to find the non-breaking space. So make sure to copy this character and move back to your spreadsheet. Now you can paste it in your spreadsheet by double clicking on one of these cells and pasting it. Now you can select the cell with the non-breaking space, one click on the other cells and paste it over there. To verify if it copy and paste correctly, you can click on the cell and check if it contains a non-breaking space over here. Okay, now all the data is set correctly in the spreadsheet. I'm just removing these examples real quick and we can save it as a CSV file. To do so, head over to File, select Download and then select CSV. Make sure where the CSV file is located and move over to Photoshop, and then we're going to import the CSV file. In Photoshop, we're opening up the dataset menu. In the dataset menu, you can click on Import. Over here you can click on Select File and make sure that the file type is set to CSV. Then the spreadsheet we have just created will show up. Click on it and click on Load. Also in the input menu you have the option Encoding. It's normally set to Automatic, but we're going to set it to Unicode UTF-8. And also make sure that Replace Existing Datasets is selected. So here you go, the data file we've just created in Google Spreadsheet is now imported into Photoshop, including the images and the non-breaking space. When you're importing big amounts of datasets, it's highly recommended to set the preview function off, because it might happen that Photoshop will crash because of the amount of the previews it needs to generate. Now we can have a look on how many datasets were imported over here and see if all the data is imported correctly. Saving the datasets can be done in the same way as we did in the previous chapter. All that's left for now is thanking you for watching this video, and make sure to subscribe if it helped you.